Hello everyone and welcome to Brave Souls Rewind, the show where I 200 older characters so you don't have to. Today I'll be covering Katen Kyokotsu, one of my favorite zanpakutos in the game, and a character that we'll hopefully see a resurrection for later this year. For now though, let's find out if she's still viable. Now I started off with the normal attack damage build. Sadly I wasn't able to get the wooden sword accessory, so to compensate I did increase her attack more than I usually would for a rewind. I also gave her 3 boosted naddlings as opposed to the usual 1, and the result was actually pretty good. Not only did it do a decent amount of damage, but she also had decent speed. Unfortunately though, she really doesn't have range going for her, so this really slowed her down. Not only that, but the only reason I was actually dealing a decent amount of damage was because I had the attribute advantage as well as the Soul Reaper killer. In reality, she really only has a bruiser at 10, and against any other enemy she wouldn't be dealing this much damage. That said, against this one specifically she did hold her own, even though it did take a bit longer. So I'm not really gonna say that this build is viable, but it's also not a terrible option, at least against this specific enemy.
Bleep bloop.
Next up I tried the strong tech damage build, and I really didn't know what to expect. I try not to look at the abilities for these characters before I do a rewind on them, so I was actually pleasantly surprised to find out she was dealing a decent amount of damage, despite not having Frenzy. She does however have a strong tech damage link, and she also has a Berserker at 25%. The result of all this meant that she's dealing a lot of damage with her strong attacks. Unfortunately though, once you're out of strong attacks you have to go back to your normal attack. And that's the biggest problem with this build, because in addition to not having range with a normal attack, under this build she also doesn't have damage, since all she has going for her is that 10% bruiser. If you want to dodge around to wait for her strong attacks to come back, you are free to do that, but that's really the only way you're gonna get any damage out of this build, so it's really not viable. Next up is the strong attack recharge build, and I'm not gonna lie, I was actually pretty concerned. At this point I didn't know how much of an increase under strong attack she had, but I did know she didn't have frenzy. So replacing strong attack damage linked with strong attack recharge was gonna cut a lot of my strength. To my surprise though, it was still enough to take care of most of the enemies in one shot, so it was definitely a better build, since the strong attacks came back quicker. Don't get me wrong, you still have to use your normal attacks from time to time, but it's not nearly as much as the last build. Plus, unlike her normal attacks, her strong attacks do have decent range, at least for an older character. And they come back fast enough that you shouldn't feel bad about using one to take care of one enemy. Honestly, this isn't the kind of build I would take in anything harder than a 5-star raid, but it's definitely still a viable build. Next up was the hybrid build, and I gotta say gameplay wise I still kind of like the strong attack recharge build better, if only because I got to spam the strong attacks a bit more. That said, this build is definitely better. Not only do your strong attacks still deal a decent amount of damage, enough to take care of the smaller enemies in one shot, but now your normal attacks deal a decent amount of damage too. You still don't have the range and it's not as much power as the first build, but it's definitely enough to compensate for your strong attacks while you're waiting for them to recharge. Much like the last build, it's a build I wouldn't take on anything harder than a 5-star raid, but honestly that's more due to the character having lower stats and not that great of abilities. Still, it is the best build out of the 3, and one you should play around with if you have this character. In the end, she's still gonna get a C from me. The last 2 builds are usable, but you do have to stack stuff in your favor, and you can't really take her on anything too difficult. I am excited to see how they resurrect her though, since she came out in a time when strong attacks had decent range, but nothing too ridiculous like we have now. Hopefully we won't have to wait too long.
神死にの槍武闘連陣甘すぎや
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe to the channel, and let me know what other characters you want to see in a rewind.